Race to the top. We've entitled the report, Building the Workforce for Economic and Social Prosperity. And this is because over the last few years, we've undertaken research both on economic diversity in our Bigger and Better Beyond the Boom project, which resulted in a report, Perth's Pathway to Prosperity. And last year, we looked at the future of work. And what we found in both of those pieces of research was that WA's skilled, educated and creative people will be our most valuable future resource, yet are diminishing in supply. Greater Perth's workforce is influenced by demographic change with an ageing population, and this would be true both across the state and the country. Unless addressed though, this may negatively impact on the workforce and the regional skills base. Concerningly, skilled workers are in short supply throughout Australia, and human capital growth in WA has stagnated, with a comparative decline over the past 2 decades when compared to metropolitan regions across the country. So this gave rise to Race to the Top. What we wanted to understand was how could we meet current and future workforce needs, because we understood it was one of the biggest challenges facing many businesses in WA, and you're all acutely aware of that today. The urgency of preparing the workforce, we believe, could not be underestimated, and that's why we called it Race to the Top. It was a race for industry, education providers and policymakers to deliver a ready workforce. So the purpose of the Race to the Top research project was to look at immediate labour and skill shortages and prepare the workforce to meet future industry demand. So both the current skills crisis and then what we would need into the future. This is the journey we've been on since August 2021 and the 11 steps to get to the place that we are today ahead of tomorrow's public launch of a very significant body of work. In terms of Race to the Top, we had 3 academic bulletins prepared by TRUM, and we did 2 rounds of industry consultation. The first round looked at the key findings and getting industry insights around what the data was telling us. And the second round was to shape the recommendation. I can tell you they significantly changed from the first draft to the final version. And there is the copy of the report to be released tomorrow. In the report, we make 6 key findings. The first of which is skill and labour shortages loom large, and accessing the latent labour supply will help. And I'll have a question for TRUM to explain to you a bit more about the latent labour supply later. TRUM also found in her research that there's a concerning skills mismatch, and that's evident particularly amongst recent graduates and those particularly with generalist degrees. The third key finding is understanding mechanisms and skill transferability and labour mobility and how they can address future labour demand. The fourth key finding is that there is spatial and gender differences in WA in the labour market, and this will have future impacts as well. Migration has been and will continue to be an important part of filling the gaps in our labour market here in this state. That's finding number 5. And finding number 6, investment is needed in data so to inform workforce planning and understand labour mobility. In the report, we make 14 recommendations. We've embedded the principles into the work that we have done and the recommendations that we make. We want to see Western Australia move from a just-in-time workforce philosophy. We believe that having a local labour supply that is complemented by overseas and interstate migration is important. We want to improve the utilisation of skilled resources. We want to build data and modelling capability. And importantly, to be embedded is to leave no one behind. Here's the recommendations at a glance. The 14 go across what we think are sort of 3 key themes: barriers, attraction and integration, and I'll discuss each of those now. So in terms of barriers, we understood quite early on that reducing the visa processing time was going to be important as soon as borders opened, and there's a chorus of voices on that front, and we join in the support of that. But we also recommend a temporary suspension of labour market testing, which is creating a delay in actually getting visas in the system, workers in the system in the first place. And we've got a tie to that. We're saying that, it's only during a chronic skills crisis, it's not always. We also want the skills and qualification recognition for migrants so that they are working immediately in the jobs that they have the skills for. And I'm sure each of us has a story about an Uber driver who has an engineering degree, and we want that to stop. We also want to be enabling retirees and pensioners to re-enter the workforce. They are skilled, knowledgeable people who could re-enter the workforce tomorrow if some of the barriers were reduced. We want to develop an employment transition program, a fairly short-term program that would take people who are currently receiving welfare and pensions to be able then to either be in the workforce or more fully participate in the workforce without losing government assistance in the first instance. We want to develop best practice for workplace inclusiveness, because we're going to take people from the latent labour supply. We need to make sure that they're successful in their transition into employment or further employment. And we want to reduce employment and occupational bias. In terms of attraction, we believe that WA's interest on migration would be best served by having a unified voice, so that industry unions and the government joining together and having a very strong position on the migration needs for this state. We also believe that the profiles of Perth, Greater Perth and WA need to be heightened. And we've certainly looked at this in our #Perth project and the subsequent Borlu Court report, Perth is Good. As the world emerges from COVID, cities, provinces and countries are playing a competitive game, and we want to make sure that Perth and WA is a destination of choice. And we also want to have a pathway to permanent residency for migrants. So migrants who are currently here on temporary visas, if they meet all of the requirements, should have a much more easy pathway to permanent residency. In terms of integration, we want to see stronger partnerships between education providers and industry. We want to make sure that there is a one-stop shop, that, an online sense, so that parents, students and employers can go to one single point to get all of the information that they need. Each of us needs to be involved in in lifelong learning. So that's a sense of building on our skills base all the time, rather than just graduating with a qualification and then not adding to our skills. And finally, we're calling for the establishment of Future Employment WA. This is a strategic move to bring all parts of the education and training and employment system together in a single body. And we believe that that should be an independent advisor to government. So how do we win the race to the top? We believe that each of the recommendations that I have shared with you can be tackled in 3 years. As you see, each of them needs to be commenced today, and some can be completed by the end of the year, with most going through 2 or 3 years. But there are significant things that need to be done now, and we don't believe that the starting point should be off into the future. So we need to remove the barriers to accessing additional workers. We need to put in place actions that will make Perth, Greater Perth and WA an attractive destination for migrants and interstate workers to live and work. And we want to be very strategic about workforce planning by thinking long term rather than just providing a just-in-time workforce. All of the Committee for Perth members, which cover 40 sectors in the economy, have participated to this project, but we've also had project partners, and I'd like to acknowledge and thank the Australian Institute of Management here in Western Australia, Anglicare WA, the City of Mandurah, Keystar and Water Corporation, all very important partners, and had very specific insights to give to this project. And here is the project steering committee, comprised of the funding partners and also complemented by Chris Kent, the WA State Director of Hayes, the recruitment firm. And I really want to thank the steering committee for being so engaged in this project.